All right. So in this block of the Cultural Hall, I'm excited to welcome back Richard Turley. Thank you for being here, sir.
You're welcome.
And I'm excited because when we visited before, we were talking about the Mountain Meadow Massacre, and you alluded to this project. And if you listen very closely to that episode, you can hear that you knew about this project well before Elder Oaks announced it. But you have, in fact, been commissioned, which I want to ask about, to write a book called Joseph the Prophet for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So the first question is, when they say commissioned, is it they come to you and they say, here's a bag of cash and we want you to write that? Or what does that mean, commissioned?
It means that they called me in and asked me to write the book.
Okay.
And there are very few commissions in the history of the church. This is very highly unusual.
And so I guess my question with that would be, is it considered a calling?
That word was not used, but I certainly feel that in my own heart. I feel that this is something that I'm doing because of the feelings I have in my heart.
Yeah. And what an honor. As you think about it, or as if you looked into it, or other people have told you, what are other things that the church has commissioned in its past?
Well, there haven't been very many things that I would say are commissioned in this sense. Certainly the First Presidency was very interested in James E. Talmage's Jesus the Christ. He had given a series of lectures, and they wanted him to take those and put them together, which they did. In many ways, you can hear an echo of Jesus the Christ in Joseph the Prophet. So there are some similarities between the two projects.
Tell me, what are those similarities? Just a commissioning or beyond? Let's go a little bit deeper.
So I'm not sure the word commissioning was used for James E. Talmage. It might have been. I haven't seen a record that says that. But certainly the First Presidency wanted him to take the research that he had done and put it together and refine it in such a way that a book on the Savior Jesus Christ, the leader of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, could be available to all of the members. And of course, Joseph the Prophet was the prophet of the Restoration, through whom Latter-day Saints believe the church was founded.
So I also think, when I think of the church commissioning things, like that puts you in the company of like Minerva Teichert as well, who was commissioned with some art pieces. That's some pretty heavy company, James E. Talmage and Minerva Teichert, Richard.
Well, it's a fun thing to do in my senior years, if you want to call them that.
Yeah, it's fun to me. We joked around about it when we chatted before, how you are now busier in your air quote senior years than you've ever been before. So I appreciate you giving the church and all of us your time, for sure.
Well, there are lots of things people can do in retirement. You read books about retirement, and they generally say, well, the first year people do the things they want to do. If they're a golfer, they golf. If they're a skier, they ski. And after about a year, they begin to think, I'd really like to contribute somehow to humanity. And I didn't have to go looking for that. It was given to me, and I'm grateful to have this thing to give meaning to my later years.
Can you tell me a little bit about how they called, or they asked, or commissioned you to do this?
I was invited into a meeting and they asked. That's the short version. The long version, at some point in the future, I might write down, but that's essentially what it is. They asked, I responded. The approach that I'm taking is very much like the approach that I've taken to other books, like the Mountain Meadows volumes. I'm not doing this project alone. If you look around at how books are typically written in the academic world, they're generally written by professors who do this part-time. And if it's a really significant book, it may take 7 years for them to write. Sometimes they have a research assistant aiding them in that, sometimes more. But let's just say on average, a really good book is written in 7 years by a professor working part-time with a part-time assistant. If you consider a full work year, we'll just call it 2,000 hours. I've never worked a year that short, but let's just call it 2,000 hours. And let's assume that professor can put 7,000 hours into this book, and his or her research assistant could do the same. So you got, say, 14, 15,000 hours in a major book as opposed to a minor book. Imagine what happens if you can put 150,000 hours in. So the volumes that we did on the Mountain Meadows Massacre were team efforts. We had dozens and dozens of people helping us
Sure.
all over, giving us information. And this project will be assembled, if you want to call it that, in much the same way. We already have dozens of people who are doing research using various levels of, well, not only various levels, but various types of expertise to help gather information. The Joseph Smith Papers Project provided a very good foundation. If you think of one of the great pyramids in Egypt, and think about, say, the bottom third of that foundation on which the pyramid rises from there is figuratively the Joseph Smith Papers. It took us 22 years roughly to finish the Joseph Smith Papers, 23, plus the earlier work that Dean Jesse had done on them. So decades of work to lay that foundation. Now that we have that foundation laid, there's a good opportunity to create a biography. But the biography will be narrative in nature, and it will necessarily have to summarize certain things because narrative biographies don't spend a lot of time in analysis.
Sure.
So if you can think of the biography as being the top little pinnacle of the pyramid, that is sort of the ultimate at the top, then what we're going to be doing over the next several years is to construct that infrastructure underneath it. You'll see a flowering of research on Joseph Smith, as many of these people who have agreed to assist will publish articles either in various journals or perhaps in book form that will provide the foundation on top of the Joseph Smith Papers for the biography, which will rest at the very pinnacle.
So give me an idea of when we think this is going to be completed. Is that a date on a calendar that we've circled, and that when you wake up in the middle of the night, you look at that date and go, how are we ever going to do this? Or is it a little bit more vague?
It's not a specific date, although I do have a Gantt chart that we've created that sort of tracks all these many pieces. You have to do that in a project of this sort.
Yeah.
But I suspect it's many years off. When I was asked that question at the recent Joseph Smith Papers Symposium when the project was announced, I smiled and quoted Michelangelo, who, when asked when the Sistine Chapel would be done, said, "When it's finished."
Yeah, perfect. It'll be done when it's done. Stop asking. Now, I do have a curious question about that, because you are the visible person with the project, or certainly the head of it. The book will be notated as authored by you, but a team works on it. How come that is, or why is that? Or is it because they want to give it to one person, or what? How come that works that way?
So I was asked to write it, and I chose to have a team assist me.
Okay.
For the reasons I've already described. If I were to do it as a one-person project, perhaps with one assistant, it could rise to one level of quality. And if I bring in a whole team, it can rise vastly higher than that. And I chose the latter.
Visiting with my own father, who's like, "You're able to talk to Richard Turley?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, my old pal Rick, of course we are." He said, what could be written that hasn't already been written? And I'm sure you've gotten this question, but I am curious, like, what does this hope to do that other books that have been written about Joseph Smith have not done?
Well, first of all, this is going to focus on Joseph Smith in his role as a prophet. Some biographies have attempted to cover his entire life in all detail about all aspects. We're going to focus primarily on his life, his prophetic role. Second, the Joseph Smith Papers Project has provided a wonderful foundation. And to that foundation, we can add additional works that have been done by other scholars who have written about Joseph Smith. But with this team of people that we've assembled, we can do some things that haven't been done yet that will lay a foundation for a new biography of Joseph Smith that will have new information in it, provide a different picture of him than we've ever seen. For example, many of the Joseph Smith Papers people, in the process of creating the papers, discovered areas that needed more research or clues that could lead to additional information. We kept the team, I helped start the project, and those who oversaw it helped to focus the team so that it remained focused on the papers themselves and not having people go off on tangents here and there. But now that the Joseph Smith Papers Project is finished, many of those great Joseph Smith Papers scholars who made notes about other areas that needed research, now they can go off and do that as support for the Joseph Smith Biography Project. And finally, I think that when you dig deeper than anyone has ever dug before, you see the picture better than anybody else has ever dug before. The Joseph Smith Papers provided a great foundation. We've got dozens of people doing work right now to do additional research. We have already, and we will continue to find new information about Joseph Smith that will help to inform the biography and illuminate his life.
One of the things that I know people, I don't think concern is the right word, but when something is commissioned by the church, they have the question of not authentic. I don't think that that's the right word, but because people are tricky, people are, not everything is sunshine with people, that there are, things that happen in people's lives. Are those going to be things that will be addressed with the prophet Joseph, within Joseph the Prophet, this book that you're writing, or are we focusing more on sort of the doctrine and the result from Joseph's life?
So if they relate to Joseph Smith's role as a prophet, yes, they will be included. Although in saying that, I just finished, as you know, with Barbara Jones Brown, a book on the Mountain Meadows Massacre. We ended up having to trim 80,000 words out of that manuscript before we could turn it in order to get it to the size that the publisher wanted. You always want more space when you're writing something.
Mm-hmm.
So all historians select what goes into their work. It is impossible to create a biography that fully maps every aspect of any individual's life. I don't know if you remember back in the 1970s when we used to talk a lot about semantics.
Mm-hmm.
And the man who really brought that to our attention basically said the map is not the thing. If you were to create a map that fully documented every aspect of the area it covered, it would be as large as the area that it covered. And of course, that's impossible. It makes the map useless.
Right.
So this biography will be a biography of Joseph Smith as prophet. And we will do our very best to include all of the important elements related to his role as a prophet, whether that is material we've heard about in the past or something new. And of course, Joseph Smith, as in his role as prophet, he said and did things for which he was chastised in Latter-day Saint scripture. So that much of that, of course, will also be part of this biography.
And you talk about it being sort of a narrative, which to me, at least in my mind, hopefully this is accurate, that signals, and I go, oh, good, I'll be able to read it. Because some of those highly academic books, I'm like, what are we doing? What is going on right now? This is far too deep for me. I sort of equate it to something like the Saints Project that the church has done. Is it going to be in that vein?
Very much like that. When we started the Saints Project back in 2008, I pulled a team of people together and I said, almost tongue in cheek, we are going to do something highly extraordinary. I'm kind of echoing what Emma Smith said when she started the Relief Society. So we're going to write a history that people will actually want to read. And I said it tongue in cheek because I've had associates come to me and say things like, I have 3 readers, my mom, my dad, and myself. Historians often write to each other, and highly academic works are couched in that kind of vein. When we started the Saints Project, our goal was to have millions read it, and that's proving to be the case. Because it's in narrative form, it's in story form, millions have read it. Now, it's on a strong academic foundation. If you look at the notes that come with that, and particularly if you use the electronic version, you can bridge and dig very, very deeply on lots of subjects. So this will be similar to that, although the reading level will be higher than what we have for Saints, but lower than what you have for your sort of hard academic materials. So the idea is that it will appeal to the general audience and be read by millions.
Is there a particular part of Joseph the prophet, as you think about him, as you think about his life as the prophet, and as you look at your life, is there a particular part that you're excited to learn more about?
I began studying Joseph Smith at an unusual depth when I was about 15 years of age. I'm 67 today.
Today, so I've spent your birthday?
No, not today.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, you're about to get me to sing you happy birthday, but okay. 67.
So I've studied his life for over 50 years. And the more I study him, the more intrigued I am. Now you have to realize I'm kind of impatient when it comes to reading and studying things. If I watch a movie once, generally that's all I'm going to watch it is just once. Same with reading a book. Mm-hmm. But there are certain things I can go over and over and over again. Joseph Smith's life is of such depth and interest that I've been going over it and over it again. The more I go over it, the more things I learn and see and understand about him. So his entire prophetic career, from the time he first had his experiences, his spiritual experiences as a youth until his martyrdom in 1844. That entire period is of interest to me. But I also feel that in many ways it crescendos in Nauvoo.
Mm-hmm. So is Nauvoo kind of the part that I want to know a little bit about, what, because I love the prophet Joseph as well. Having the opportunity to serve my mission in Kirtland, I knew that I was literally walking where the prophet had walked. And so I feel sort of a greater closeness, maybe that's just in my heart, to the prophet Joseph than maybe some other people would feel. But is there a particular part of him being a prophet that you're like, man, I cannot wait to go down this rabbit hole, or to be able to share this stuff that I've learned? Is there a particular part?
As I've studied his life, what I've discovered is that he was into a lot of areas of doctrine and understanding long before we thought he was. And he's trying to bring the members of his church, the Latter-day Saints, along with him to grow and progress over time. But it becomes difficult because sometimes when he moves too fast, they don't like that. They rebel against it. So he's patiently going along for much of his life. And when he gets to Nauvoo, he gets a sense that his life's about over. And he finally just throws caution to the wind and says, I'm going to let it all come out, knowing that it may result in my death. And it does. So the Nauvoo period of his life is the culminating portion. And so far, the way we've got the chapters mapped out, Nauvoo will probably be about half of the book.
Wow. That's such a man. I'm sort of intellectually salivating as I hear you talk about this book, and I should let you go to get to work on it so we can get it just that much quicker. Are there any sort of or I guess probably more accurately asked, what are the sort of oversight that the church, whoever that within the church is, has over this project? Meaning, is there a committee that once you guys get this all done, that they go, okay, Richard, we're not going to put that in, this got to go? Or how does that sort of approval of the material go?
So this being a commission, at some point I will turn over what I have finished to the church, and then they'll decide what happens to it from there. But in the meantime, I have written more than 20 books. And in the writing of those books, I've never had anybody who is sort of overseeing my work on a day-to-day basis. I oversee my own work and oversee teams of people. And that's the approach I expect to follow on this volume. That I will just go forward with a group of people who I've come to know over the decades, who have great expertise in various fields or areas of study or research. And they will do their work. I will take that work and bring it together. And then we'll end up with a final product and once I'm satisfied with that, I'll turn it over to the church.
I like the idea, though, in my mind's eye, I like the idea of almost like you defending a dissertation, where you would get called into the quorum and they're like, Brother Turley, great to have you here. We have a few questions about your work that you've got on page, and being able to do that. I know that's not how it is, but there is a certain part of my heart that wants, a Richard Turley dissertation defense as he talks through his book.
Well, who knows? At some point in the future, after I turn it over, they may have some questions for me. Of course, I'll always be happy to answer.
And you're a person of integrity, which I love so much, is that,
yes.
You're not, this isn't ever going to be try and, mudsling or anything like that. I think that you, certainly, as we've discussed and other things that you've discussed, you are able to say, hey, this is a sticky point. This is a difficult thing. This may be a greater thing that needs context that we need to talk about. But the one thing that I take a lot of great trust in is that you're not just going to be like, oh, no, we're not going to talk about that. And it's this significant part of who Joseph the prophet is. Is there
if it deals with Joseph the prophet, we'll tackle it.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people are probably pretty excited about that, because it is a commission thing by the church, and you have yourself and this team to be able to suss it out, to be able to, give some greater understanding to where other people may just be like, I still don't know about. And obviously I'm vaguely talking around maybe polygamy or something like that, but that'll be a part of the subject of this book.
It will be. And I think, as with other things that I've been blessed to participate in the past, there'll be new understanding, new information, and that people, when they read the book in the end, we hope that they'll be both informed and illuminated.
Are you nervous about it at all?
I'm really not. I
That's
can't think of
awesome.
a better way to spend these later years than doing what I'm doing.
And your wife's on board, I would assume, or is she like, come on, Richard, I thought we were going to travel. What are we?
She's on board. I think she knows this makes me happy. And so she and I still spend time together, usually in the evenings and weekends, but most of the time, this is my focus.
An incredible project. And I just think it's amazing what you do when you talk about over 20 books, and certainly some of the books that you've written are looked to as like the official word on, and I'm thinking Mountain Meadows Massacre probably at the forefront of all that. The question I want to kind of leave on is, as you go to write about this very significant subject, you're working with your team. What sort of what would be the word that I would want to use in this? What sort of practice do you have to get yourself spiritually like prepared to be able to do this? Because this isn't just, what you're writing isn't just like, today I went to the grocery store and that was great and people were nice. This impacts not only you, not only the team that you work with, but the church essentially as a whole. How do you prepare yourself to work within that space?
You've heard of actors who, before filming something or performing, will try to get themselves in character.
Mm-hmm.
I try to get my mind into the mode of thinking the way Joseph Smith thought. Because I think that unless we can understand how he was thinking at any given time, it's very difficult to understand his life, and particularly his role as a prophet.
Significant. It's Joseph the Prophet. No release date yet, but by the sound of it, some of it already kind of written, things coming together, a whole team, and Richard Turley, the man behind the project, commissioned. I hope that you, when the book comes out, you'll be willing to come back and tell us everything about it, the things that you learned, the thing that excites you about it. But that won't be for years, it sounds like. So
but happy to do so.
We'll put that on the calendar in the future. Richard, I appreciate you taking your time. Now get back to work. All right.
Thanks again for the invitation.
You bet.